In this week's edition of the NNY Capitol Report, we spoke with Tom Clark, Canadian Consul General to New York, as he made his annual visit to Albany on Wednesday. Clark discussed his nation's relationship reconfiguration with the U.S. in the face of harsh rhetoric from President Trump, as well as how the state of New York is trying to maintain its own relationships with the northern nation. What's the message?
So this is annually I come here for Canada Day, and we do a couple of days here, meeting with all of the leaders. So I met with the governor, I met with the minority and majority leaders, and the message is pretty simple, that we are in a very unusual time right now in terms of the relationships between the two countries. What we are doing in Canada is building a new relationship with the United States because the old one is over. And what I'm trying to emphasize to everybody is that we want to take the very best of the old relationship and bake it into the new relationship. And, simply put, that means we recognize that we've been in each other's kitchens for 200 years between New York and Canada. Families have intermixed, businesses have always worked together, and increasingly we don't trade with one another, we make stuff together. And that is really the strength of it. So we're trying to do whatever we can to preserve that strength and that history and everything that's motivated us for 200 years and preserve it, despite the fact that we're in a bit of a snowdrift right now and the wheels are spinning.
As the Watertown Daily Times has been reporting for nearly a year now, there's been a distinct drop in the number of Canadian visitors crossing into the U.S., felt at bridges and in businesses across the North Country. Cross-border discussions often come back to the tariffs the president has enacted and adjusted repeatedly, while North Country officials have worked to maintain the business relationships that have become vital to their northern New York economy. Clark said that the relationship can likely continue in some fashion, but Canada is also looking in other places for economic partnerships now as well.
I'd love to say that Canadians are going to come back next week. Uh, that's not going to happen. Canadians right now are really angry, and this has been going on for some time. And it's not really dissipating all that much. And now they've been given a new direction with the current government in Ottawa, who's saying we're going to, we got a plan, we can look outside and everything like that. So there's not at this point anything motivating Canadians in large numbers to come back. One thing I would say is this, is that crossings may be down by 30%, but that means another 70% are still coming. So, judge the numbers accordingly. But here's the thing. Canadians will eventually come back. They will, because we've been doing it for hundreds of years. But it's not going to happen until somebody stops punching us in the nose. And as long as that continues, Canadians are going to continue to be very upset. They're pissed. I mean, Canadians are really pissed. And so I think that until you get over that, it'd be unrealistic to think that there's going to be a sudden change. I think the way to do it, though, the way to start talking back and forth is ignore the noise, turn off X and Truth Social for a while, have real conversations, and basically tell each side, just hug it out, And we know that our fight is not with New Yorkers. I always tell Canadians back in Canada, I said, Americans continue to be, by the tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, the warmest, most generous people on the face of the planet. Our fight is not with them. Our fight is not with those people who constantly come up to us and apologize and say, this doesn't represent me. And so we appreciate that. That's wonderful. But I think when you look at it through Canadian eyes, you say, this is all good, but I'm still under attack. My country's still under attack. We're being disrespected on all levels. I won't go through the whole litany because it doesn't bear repeating as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not going to amplify the words of somebody who's attacking my people. But I don't think that in the long run that this is going to be a permanent fixture of our relationship. We've done too much together over hundreds and hundreds of years for this to completely upset what we're doing. So I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, I'm also realistic.
But New York is trying to maintain its connections with Canada in spite of it all. Last year, the governor launched a special marketing campaign aimed at getting Canadian tourists back to New York, and under her administration, economic and infrastructure ties with the country are only getting closer. Cross border business ventures remain active and expanding in some cases.
So what I do, and I say to people, let's take a look at actually what we've done, the proof of concept between New York and Canada. Let's just say those two entities. Well, we've got the semiconductor corridor, which goes from Albany to Bromont, Quebec, and that's a huge success. In a couple of months, they're going to be flipping the switch on that huge extension cord coming from Quebec, providing 20% of the electricity to New York City and to other cities down the route. Eventually that is going to this spring power 1 million homes in New York, or the equivalent of 1 million homes in New York. And I point to those because I can say, New York and Canada can do stuff together that doesn't involve the relationship with Washington. In other words, we can do stuff. Yes, Washington and Ottawa are always going to have a say in what goes on, but we've got proof of concept that we can do this. And so there is a real route here for New York and Canada to continue doing this. And I think there's new stuff to do, right? I mean, if you take a look at critical minerals and the processing of critical minerals, if you stop and think about it for a minute, think of everything in New York and then think of everything in Canada, and then you say, my God, we got it all. We don't need anything else. We can actually be world beaters. And the bottom line for me is that we could form the most amazing economic unit that the world has ever seen if we just stop putting the puck in our own net, right? And that's really what it comes down to.
When asked where he thinks the US Canada relationship might go into the future, Clark said that that's a question that can only be answered by who is chosen to lead the country next. For the Watertown Daily Times Albany Bureau, I'm Alex Gault.